Welcome back to our podcast. This is One Nation, One Justice. I'm Jim Carmichael. Thank you for joining me, and let's get into today's broadcast. Today, I'd like to talk about the living conditions in our prisons and how does that affect prison reform. Maybe what I should say, how does that affect prisoners or inmates? Let's start with this. Innocent, yet in a cage, and what we must build instead. In America, we say something that sounds strong, something that sounds just, and that is a person is innocent until proven guilty. Before a person is convicted, before all the evidence is examined, before a jury reaches a verdict, that person is to be treated as innocent. That's what we say. But when we look at how our system actually operates, especially at the jail level, we find a serious contradiction. Every day across this country, men and women are arrested, placed into jail, and sometimes left there for months, a year, or even longer while waiting for trial. Waiting, just waiting. Not convicted, not sentenced, not proven guilty. Just waiting. And while they wait, many are housed in some of the most difficult conditions in our entire correctional system. Overcrowding, constant noise, little privacy, limited access to the basic elements of human dignity. They are placed in cages, sometimes for extended periods of time, and all the while, our justice system continues to say, you are innocent until proven guilty. But the reality they are living tells a different story. And this is the hidden injustice of pretrial confinement. Think about what this means. Imagine being falsely accused of a crime. You know you didn't do it. Your family knows you didn't do it. But you are arrested, processed, and placed in a jail cell. Then, in effect, the system tells you, don't worry, you're innocent until proven guilty. And again, then the waiting begins. Weeks turn into months. Months may turn into a year or longer. You are still presumed innocent in the eyes of the law, but you are living behind bars. Your job may be gone. Your reputation may be damaged. Your family is under tremendous strain. Your life as you knew it may already be falling apart. And even if you are eventually acquitted, the damage caused by that period of confinement cannot simply be erased. So we need to ask an honest question. If a person is presumed innocent, why are we housing that person under conditions that function and feel like punishment? But there is another principle we need to establish as well. Even when someone is guilty, even when that person has confessed or has been convicted, we should not accept the idea that human beings must live like animals simply because they are incarcerated. Accountability does not require inhumanity. I want to qualify all this by one additional statement. There are times, even though a person is not convicted, his guilt is very obvious. And not only that, he is guilty of a horrendous crime, maybe multiple murders. We don't know. The point is that we must understand there are times we must jail a person before conviction. And I understand that, and I'm sure you do too. So let's just move on beyond that for a moment. And let's talk about what jail should be. If a jail is primarily intended to hold individuals awaiting trial, then its design should reflect that purpose. Pretrial confinement is not supposed to be punishment for a crime for which a person has not yet been convicted. It should be secure, structured, temporary housing under the presumption of innocence. That means the environment should reflect that principle. And I'm not suggesting luxury, but I am suggesting something humane, stable, orderly, and just. That there should be adequate room to move, sit, read, and think. Sanitation should be clean and functional. Overcrowding should be not just reduced, but eliminated. There should be order instead of unnecessary chaos. Because if we claim to uphold the presumption of innocence, then the way we treat people awaiting trial should be consistent with that claim. Now, after conviction comes a different responsibility. Once a person has received due process and has been convicted, the situation changes. Accountability has been established. Consequences are real, and incarceration may be part of that consequence. But even then, we need to understand something very important. The punishment is the loss of freedom. It is not the loss of humanity. It is not the deliberate destruction of dignity. And it is not the abandonment of responsibility by the state. Most incarcerated people will eventually return to society. That means the question isn't simply, how do we contain this person while he is here? We must also ask, what kind of person are we preparing to send home? Because whatever environment we create inside our prisons will influence the people who eventually walk back out of them. And our communities will live with the results. Now, you're going to hear me repeat this all through this entire prison reform program, that we should not be thinking about punishment and revenge, even though I totally agree that's part of it. But we better be thinking about who are we going to bring home. And that means we better start thinking about reshaping a person in prison, reshaping them to be a good citizen, a productive citizen, not a hardened criminal. So with that said, let's rethink the prison living unit. For generations, prison design has focused primarily on containment. Small cells, multiple occupants, constant tension. Living spaces that can resemble storage areas for human beings more than environments intended to encourage responsible behavior. But containment alone does not create discipline, and degradation does not automatically produce rehabilitation. If we are serious about reform, then we need to reconsider the living environment itself, not as a cage, but as a structured, controlled living unit designed to encourage responsibility, stability, and normal human functioning. Let's consider a new standard, apartment-style living units. I believe the standard prison living unit should move towards something resembling a small apartment-style space, perhaps approximately 250 to 400 square feet. Not excessive, not luxurious, but functional, human. Within that space could be clearly defined areas. A sleeping area with a proper bed, a small sitting area with basic seating, a chair or bench, where a person can sit normally instead of spending most of the day on a bunk, a table or desk for writing, reading, studying, eating, and other structured activities, a private sanitation area with a toilet and sink designed with basic dignity in mind, and where security classifications permit, perhaps a small kitchenette-style area for controlled use, allowing people to practice basic life skills and develop ordinary routines they will need after release. This isn't about turning prisons into hotels. It is about asking what kind of physical environment encourages the behavior we want people to develop. Let's talk about why space matters. Human beings respond to their environment. A person needs the opportunity to develop a routine. Wake up, make the bed, organize the living space, sit down, have breakfast, read, study, think, reflect, or work. Accept responsibility for maintaining one's surroundings. Those may seem like small things, but they aren't. Those are elements of ordinary, responsible life. When an environment is dominated by chaos and survival, people learn to function within chaos and survival. But when we introduce structure, we create opportunities to practice responsibility. Discipline can begin to take root, and those habits matter when someone returns home. Let's look at another issue, and that is preserving what matters most, and that's the family. This is another part of prison reform that we cannot ignore. Family. When someone enters prison, we don't incarcerate that person in isolation from the rest of society. A spouse is affected. Children are affected. Parents are affected. Entire families can be changed by a prison sentence. Yet too often our correctional system makes maintaining those relationships extraordinarily difficult. Short visits, limited physical interaction, long travel distances, cold and impersonal visiting environments. That may preserve contact, but it does not necessarily preserve a family. We need a system that helps keep families together. That is the basic unit of humanity. If we are serious about what happens after incarceration, then prison design should include opportunities for structured and meaningful family interaction that could and should include designated family visitation areas, and for carefully selected individuals who meet strict behavioral and security requirements, extended family visits, perhaps even approved weekend family stays within controlled environments. Not for everyone, not automatically, and certainly not without accountability. They would have to be earned and carefully regulated, but we should at least be willing to consider them, because a family relationship is not maintained simply on an occasional conversation across a table or through a barrier. Relationships require time, interaction, shared experiences. A father should have opportunities when appropriate to continue being a father. A husband should have opportunities to preserve his marriage. A mother should have opportunities to remain meaningfully connected with her children, because incarceration should hold the offender accountable without unnecessarily punishing and dismantling the entire family. So you might ask, why does this matter? When family relationships collapse during incarceration, the consequences can continue long after the sentence ends. Children may grow up without meaningful guidance from that parent. Marriages may disappear. Support systems may be destroyed. Then one day the prison gate opens. The individual walks out alone, disconnected, without a stable support system, and then we wonder why reentry fails. But imagine the alternative. A father has remained involved in his children's lives. A marriage has survived. Family relationships have been maintained. The person leaving prison has somewhere to go, someone waiting, and something worth protecting. That doesn't guarantee success, but gives success a foundation upon which to build. And we're talking about structure, not comfort. None of this means prison should be easy. That misses the entire point. Security matters, accountability matters, rules matter, discipline matters. Privileges should be connected to behavior, responsibility, and security classification. But within that structure, the environment should support the outcome we claim we want. And what is that outcome that we want? Stable individuals, responsible individuals, disciplined individuals, people better prepared to function in society than they were when they first entered the system. Then our correctional environment should be designed to encourage rehabilitation. Let's look at the larger principle. At its core, this comes down to a simple principle. Incarceration is the loss of liberty. It should not require the loss of humanity. Not in jail, where individuals awaiting trial are still presumed innocent, and not in prison, where people are being held accountable for crimes but remain human beings. Because ultimately, we are not merely deciding how incarcerated people will live while they are behind walls. We are deciding what kind of people will eventually return to our neighborhoods. If we build environments dominated by chaos, humiliation, instability, and survival, we should not be surprised when some people carry those lessons home with them. But if we build environments grounded in structure, responsibility, accountability, dignity, education, work, family, and personal change, then we create the possibility of sending home someone better prepared to live responsibly. And isn't that what public safety should ultimately be about? Here's a final thought. Perhaps we have been asking the wrong question. For generations we have asked, how harsh should incarceration be? Maybe we should be asking, what kind of environment produces the kind of person we want living next door when that person comes home? Because for most of them, that day will come. They will leave that prison. They will return to our cities, our neighborhoods, our workplaces, our churches, our families.